Okay.
All right. Going live now. It'll take about 40 seconds.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is Vice President nominations. I spoke with Frank earlier today, and he said he's willing to be nominated. So I'd like to nominate Frank, Area 7 Director, as Vice President.
Area 3 seconds.
Thank you, Andy. Any discussion? Chair recognizes Area 6.
So to be clear, Frank would become interim president until we amend the bylaws or conduct an election? Or is this VP to assist the interim president? Which I don't think is a thing.
Frank, you have your hand?
I'm sorry, Mr. President, my computer froze on me for a second. Did you call on me?
Yes, I did.
Thank you. So for, I guess I would be raising a point of information here. So the way our current bylaw structure reads, when the president is removed, the vice president takes over the role of president. So our current interim president cannot hold two positions as per 6.2. So he is the current president. Even though we have determined he is serving in an interim role, he is the president. Effectively, he is the president. So that role does not change unless the board votes to remove that role from him. Again, as per the bylaws, 6. I forgot where that is. I have to look it up again real quick. But so this, my understanding is the vote for vice president would be just that. They would be the vice president in the event of the president's inability to serve or his absence. The vice president shall serve as president.
And Frank, you both still have your hands up.
Yeah, I guess I that's not the way I read it, so I don't know how we resolve that. To me, the vice president is acting as, fulfilling the duties of the president, but has not ceased to be the vice president.
He can't be both the vice president and the president.
Right, he is not the president. He is serving as interim president, but he is not the president.
That's not how the bylaws read, though.
That's how it reads to me. I don't know how we resolve this.
Area 4. Chair recognizes Alex.
Just want to say from a historical perspective.
Alex, you're really low volume.
Go to the next person. I need to fix something then.
Okay, we'll get back to you. Is there any other comments or discussions on this? Area 2.
I guess I'm trying to clarify because I think what Ben has stated is correct. So maybe I'm missing what Frank is stating. We would be electing Frank as the vice president for the year or until the bylaws are changed. And in that role, he would serve as the interim president until that slot is filled, is my understanding of how it works. Is that correct, Frank?
So the way I was reading it and the way this board has operated in the past, the precedent has been, as it says in 6.1, under the role of the president, in the event the president vacates the office, the vice president shall serve as interim president. So at that point, he is now the president. Even though it's an interim role, he is no longer the vice president. He is the president. And that's the way the board has operated. When the previous two presidents were no longer presidents, the vice president took over the role of president.
Okay. Frank, are you done?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Alex.
Thank you. I just want to say, I thought we'd resolve this. I was looking for an email conversation, but when previous president, that's what was advocated, that we had the same conversation and arrived at the same conclusion arrived at the conclusion which Ben is describing, the difference between acting as and fulfilling or serving in the seat. So my recollection of the last conversation, what I do agree with is that interpretation which Ben is describing. That can serve in both positions, the differentiation being serving as or acting as versus serving.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Leif?
I recall not long ago there being a conversation about the differentiation between an interim area director and an area director, that they are the same thing. I remember somebody correcting that to stop referring to somebody as interim area director because they were nominated and actually call them area director. So I think this goes along the same line.
Thank you. John?
So I guess my question again is for Frank, and I have a couple other questions, but I'm trying to get through this preliminary issue. Are you contending that you would then get a salary for your role, or this is just a semantic discussion? Because I agree, you would be the president during that period of time.
No, my contention is that Jim Boone is the president. And the election for vice president is for just that, the role of vice president. He took over the role of president. And the previous conversation that we had to do with the title of interim president. So when a new president is elected, he would go back to his role as the Area 1 director. It had nothing to do with his role as the vice president. You can't hold two seats at the same time. You can't be the vice president and the president.
Okay. I see your hand, John. I'll get to you. Anything else, Frank? Okay. Ben?
I'll just say, responsive to Leif's point, the word interim only appears in the bylaws once. So any discussion of interim area directors was an unofficial term in the context of the bylaws. Appointed area directors are not considered interim from a bylaws perspective. So not a relevant comparison in this case.
Thank you. John, before I get to you, I want to make sure everybody else that wants to speak has time. Is there anyone other than John that wants to speak? And then we'll get back to him. Any other? Okay, John?
Sorry, just trying to wrap my head around this. Frank, are you saying that Jim would continue as the president if we elect you vice president tonight?
That is correct.
Oh, yeah, I don't think that's correct in any way, shape, or form. Whoever the VP is acting as the president under the bylaws until somebody is elected to fulfill that role. Yield.
Thank you. So we have a disagreement on what is happening here, right? What the vote really means. So what I'm hearing is we need to clarify this, and procedurally, I would put a vote to the assembly to determine what is about to happen. Is Frank's interpretation the one we go with, or is the interpretation of Ben and John the interpretation we go with? Is that the appropriate thing to do at this time from a kind of a procedural question?
I would say yes. We have two different interpretations of the bylaw.
Okay. So I'm trying to figure out how to do this. Since I'm in uncharted territory here. Normally, before we put something to a vote, we have a motion and a second on it. In this case, I don't think we need that. I think we can just call the question. Okay, so the question is the vote, I'll say this simply, is the vote for VP to replace the existing vice president or to keep, right, I'll just leave it as that, okay? And what I mean by that is this is the interpretation that I believe that Ben and John are advocating. Does that accurately represent your positions?
Yeah. Yes, you continue to serve as vice president and acting president, interim president. And if we were to elect Frank, he would assume that role of interim president and vice president. But there cannot be an interim
Two.
president and a vice president at the same time. They are one position.
Okay, understand. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll answer this question. And then we'll get back to the VP nomination. And based on the answer to this question, we'll make it clear what that vote would be for. Okay? Sound like a reasonable course? Okay, so I'll do this via roll call because if we do it by voice vote, I'm going to get confused again. Okay? Area 2?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Area 3?
Yeah. This is a yes or no question.
Yeah, is the vote for the vice president to replace the existing VP? If we vote Frank.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I read an or in there. Yes.
Okay. Area 4?
Yes.
Area 5?
Yes.
Area 6?
Yes.
7?
No.
Okay. Area 8?
Yes.
Okay. So so the answer is yes. Okay. This motion, actually. Okay, so now we can get back to the vote on Frank as the vice president. So the vote would be removing me as president. Go ahead, John.
We haven't closed nominations.
I know we haven't closed, but we can do nominations sequentially because it would get rather confusing to have multiple nominations open, in my opinion. So we can
So
just
we
vote.
could elect more than one tonight? I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, we would vote on this nomination, and if it doesn't passes, we can open the floor for other nominations. If it does pass, then we move on.
To other nominations.
No, we move on to the next order of business.
Okay, but you can't only close nominations. I mean, there may be other nominations. I'll nominate myself, although I have some questions for Frank, because he may be the better candidate, but we haven't discussed it yet. So I nominate myself as vice president.
So procedurally, the president makes nominations, I believe. Right? So again, if Frank is not elected, then we can open the table again for nominations. And if there aren't further nominations, we will vote on those. Okay. So back to the question at hand. Frank has been nominated as vice president, and we have just determined that would replace me as president and seat Frank as the vice president, who would then become interim president. So that is what we're voting on at this time. Okay. Frank?
Based on the previous question that was answered by the assembly, their interpretation of the bylaws, I'd like to withdraw as being nominated for vice president. I'd like to nominate Area 1 Director Jim Boone.
So as I previously described to Mr. Burt, I think what we'll do is do the nominations in order and vote on each one sequentially. Okay. Okay, so Frank has withdrawn his nomination. Are there any other nominations? John?
I would nominate myself as vice president. I've got the time to do it, and I'm willing to work with everybody to get a consensus.
And that is 4:35 PM. Do I have a second on nominating Mr. Burt as vice president?
Area 4.
Okay, we have a second by area 4. Again, let's do this as a roll call. Area 2.
Yes.
Actually, before I do that, I'm sorry. Any discussion on this point? Okay, since there's no discussion, now, John, I will ask for your vote.
Yes.
Area 3,
No.
area 4,
Yes.
area 5,
No.
area 6,
No.
area 7,
No.
area 8,
Nope.
and I abstain. 2 yeses, does not pass. Are there any other nominations for vice president? Area 7,
Area 7 moves to nominate Area 1 Director Jim Boone as vice president.
Second by 6.
okay, area 7 nominates me as vice president, 437, seconded by area 6. Any discussion? Okay, seeing no discussion, we'll do this by roll call again. Area 2,
No.
area 3,
Yes.
area 4,
Yes.
area 5,
Yes.
area 6,
Yes.
area 7,
Yes.
area 8,
Yes.
and I will abstain again. Nomination passes at 4:38 PM. Okay. Next, area 7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Relating to this agenda item, I'd like to present this to the Assembly. What happens in the event our interim president, vice president is not available to run the meetings?
Area 6.
I think the assembly can elect the chairman from those present.
That is not in the bylaws.
I believe that's Robert's rules.
Our bylaws trump Robert's rules.
If there's a conflict, but in all parliamentary matters not defined in the bylaws, then Robert's rules clarifies the ambiguity.
Well, there is no conflict because the vice president is the interim president, and we should also have a vice president.
So I understand your point, Mr. Rizzi, but I think the Assembly answered that question on president, interim president, and vice president. I think that is something that will have to be dealt with if and when it occurs. Okay. Hopefully, that doesn't occur without notice. If it does, I'm sorry. Okay, my preemptive, I'm sorry. Okay. If there's nothing further on this one, let's move on to item 6. John, I believe this one was yours.
Thank you. I move that the board remove the current DNRI and commence a search for a replacement.
Did I capture that correctly? Move to remove current DNRI and commence a search for a replacement?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Six.
Area 6 seconds the motion. Is there any discussion on this one? Area 7.
Mr. President, since DNRI is a employee of the organization, wouldn't it be more appropriate to have the discussion in executive session?
So I believe you're raising a point of order. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Your point is well received. 10.2 says employee information is confidential. So this motion is out of order. Mr. Burt.
We are not discussing or making any employment changes. The position is a direct report to the board in the bylaws, and that's
So,
all I'm addressing.
right. So a point of order is not debatable according to Robert's rules. So the chair has made a determination that this motion is out of order.
Why don't we address that by going to executive session right now?
Is if there's a motion on the table.
I will so move.
Okay. Is there a second?
6.
Jim, you have that as area 6 above. It should be area 2 for the motion.
Sorry about that. Thank you. At 4:42. Any discussion? Okay, we'll try this by voice vote and see if I get it right this time. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, motion passes. I need to do a little. So Rick, we need to stop sharing. We need to stop recording. And I will place Troy, Alan, and Zach into the waiting.
Okay, we are now live.
Thank you. So we are out of executive session. I believe there was a proposed motion.
Area 2 moves that the board conduct a search for a new director NROI to be conducted by a committee composed of Area 2, Area 4, and Area 6.
Okay, so Area 2 moves that the board conduct a search for a new DNRI committee to be A2, A4, A6. Do I have a second?
Area 6.
Is there any discussion on the matter? Okay, we will do this. If there's no discussion, we'll move to a vote. We'll do this via roll call. Area 2,
Yes.
Area 3,
Yes.
Area 4,
Yes.
Area 5,
Yes.
Area 6,
Yes.
Area 7,
Abstain.
Area 8?
No.
And area 1's a no. Motion passes. At 5:24 p.m. Okay. Next on the agenda. John, I believe this one is yours as well.
Yes, I would move that the board adopt the draft of bylaws. We've made a few cosmetic changes in light of member feedback, so that's actually in the bylaw folder dated January 25, but it's essentially the version that the members reviewed and provided comment on.
Okay. Area 2 moves to, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I'll wait for the second and discuss.
Yeah. Area 2 moves to adopt the draft bylaws. Do I hear a second?
Four.
Area 4 seconds the motion. Any discussion? Area 2?
Yeah, I know that these are still a work in progress, and there's a lot of things we've discussed and points raised. But I think that these draft bylaws, which were overwhelmingly approved in the member review period, also achieve the vision statement the board released in December and accomplish all of those goals. And we have a retreat coming up where we can discuss remaining concerns and changes that are needed or that have been pointed out by council. So I think with telling the membership that this is a work in progress, passing them tonight is a big step forward, and it has been reviewed by a number of directors and has been evolving over quite some time. So I think it's ready to pass with the caveat that there's still more work to be done. Yield.
Thank you. Andy?
I generally like the idea of these bylaws, but there is a lot of work to do and they're not ready yet. A lot of things in here rely on policies that I've not seen a draft yet of and don't know what those are going to look like. So while I think it's a good idea, I'm going to be voting no on it tonight. But by next month, it certainly could be ready for sure. I yield.
Thank you, Andy. Ben?
I echo everything Andy just said. I share the same concerns, and I'll just note that we have shared these bylaws with council, and he would like to talk to us about concerns and changes, and we have not addressed those yet. And so I would like to go through that exercise before we approve a set of bylaws that we know we will just have to turn around and immediately amend. I yield.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Area 7.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with Andy and Ben. While I do agree that we are headed in the right direction, I don't think these bylaws are ready for prime time. The last time the board changed the bylaws this significantly, there were numerous unintended consequences that happened as a result of that. I'd like to take a little bit more time and make sure that doesn't happen again. I'd like to confer again with our attorneys, and also I would think it would be a great idea to have an actual professional parliamentarian assist us to make sure that those things don't happen again and make sure we're getting this right the first time. I'd rather not pass them right now and then have to go back and make changes. You know, I would really prefer to get it right the first time around, which is why I would move that they be sent back to the bylaw committee.
Okay, so did I hear a motion from you, Frank, to send these back to bylaw committee?
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was capturing it.
Well, we have to deal with the first motion first.
No, this is a subsequent motion, so we
Okay.
we unravel the onion, right? So we would do this one, and if it passes, it'd go to the rules committee. If not, then we deal with the first one. Okay. Eh,
And I will second that motion.
three. I forgot what area you were for a moment. Okay, any discussion on referring these to the bylaw committee? John?
Yeah, I think that's a huge mistake. I hearken back to Alex's motion to amend 10.2 that the bylaw committee said they would take up and send to council, and that was in September. It never happened. There are no minutes or records that the bylaw committee has even met. And when we tried to do it, we couldn't get a quorum. We've got the board together this weekend. We've got a lot of time, and I think this is the most important and pressing issue. And I think we should do that work together this weekend and get it done instead of sending it off to disappear.
Thank you. Alex?
I also agree with John, but I disagree with the motion for a different reason, and that's that my preference is that from a communication and engagement with these bylaws as we seek to get them to a final draft, that stays within the entire body of the board, or rather than a select committee in the bylaws committee, for the reason that John described, which things have gone there in the past and not come out. And so, yeah, I yield.
Thank you, Alex. Frank?
So, as the bylaw committee chairman, I would handle this the same way that we previously did. When it goes back to the committee, all the board members will be invited to those meetings. So we were not discussing this with just the members of the committee. This went to everyone, including the area director elects were a part of those meetings also. So it won't be just the committee. I would make that pledge that everyone will be invited to those meetings and will be involved in the conversations.
Thank you. Leif, and then we'll go to, then I'm going to call on Russell and then John. Leif?
I agree with Frank, what Frank just said, that it goes back to review again by the committee and the entire board with the inclusion of corporate counsel, and that we put a hard deadline on when that's going to happen.
Thank you. Russell, I want to make sure that you have an opportunity.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I don't really have anything to add. I'm going to vote in favor of Frank's amendment or motion.
Okay. Thank you. And Leif, your hand is still up. John?
With a hard deadline, I would be inclined to agree if we're talking in the next week or two. The only reason that bylaw committee meeting happened and that the elect members were invited was because I pushed it and chased Frank for 2 weeks to get it set and to invite everybody and make it happen. I think if I had not driven that train, it would not have happened. So I mean, I've got deep concerns based upon historically accurate facts that that's not the best route, especially when we're all going to be together this weekend and have lots of time. And this is the most important issue according to our vision statement. But if there's a commitment to get this done in the next 10 days with council and everybody's willing to put their time in addition to the time we're already putting in all weekend, fine.
Okay, any other discussion on this topic? Okay, so let's call for a vote on it. The motion is to refer the bylaw draft to the bylaw committee. And we'll do this via roll call because I can't do voice votes well. Okay. Area 2.
No.
Okay. Area 3.
Yes.
Area 4.
No.
Area 5.
Yes.
Area 6.
No.
Area 7.
Yes.
Area 8.
Yes.
Area 1 is yes as well. Motion passes at 5:33 PM. To move these to the back to the bylaw committee for further refinement. Okay. The next motion on the table is to, excuse me, the next topic is a motion to call a special election for the president. Since the draft bylaws didn't pass. I don't recall whose topic this was.
So I guess would be me. Since we've just sentenced the bylaws to death, I move that we set a date for the election, special election for president.
Do you have a date in mind so we can put
I
that as
think we're required to give it 60 days. So
when would you want the election to commence? And Rick, I have a question for Rick really fast from a logistics perspective. Rick, are you there?
Yes, sir.
I know, how long does it normally take us to spin up an election with one of our election firms?
Typically they're a little more scheduled out. I would have to reach out to them to get their current timelines.
Okay.
Rick, could you host and conduct the election?
So I would not be in favor of us hosting it because of a confidential election. None of us should know who votes for what. Right? And that's why we have a firm. Okay.
Generally, we've been able to get everything spun up in about 2 weeks.
Okay.
We might be able to shorten that. Again, I'd have to reach out to the election firm.
Okay. We'll just make the assumption that we can start the election in 2 weeks. We'll just do that. Is that acceptable, John, that we say that election would commence in 2 weeks?
Well, no, we can't. We've got to give it 60 days for nominations. So I think the election could commence on the 61st day, 61st.
Okay.
I think that's what we're setting as the cutoff for nominations.
I'm going to say 62. That way we have tomorrow to get the ball rolling.
Well,
Okay.
Yeah. Point of order. That's not. You can set the cutoff date, but the voting doesn't begin for another 45 days.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
You're right. So that is election nominations to
Yeah,
end,
that would be the cutoff date.
to end in 62 days, right? Thank you for that clarification. Leif?
Just help me understand this. What if we are able to get the draft bylaws approved in the next month? What does that do to election for president?
Okay, so hold that. I was just trying to get the motion in place. When we ask for a second, then we can go to debate. Okay.
I think it's 92 days, if I'm reading this correctly, is when we could do the election from today.
Right. So is there a second on this motion?
4.
Okay, seconded by Area 4. Now, Leif, you can ask your question. Sorry to put you off like that.
No problem. Yeah, if we're able to get these draft bylaws through review and approved in the next month, what does this do to a election for president that's no longer necessary? Because at that point we'll be spinning up a different election.
John?
It would become moot, and we would have a list of people who are interested in the director at large, and hopefully we could do that on a much quicker scale. If we've amended the bylaws, we've also fixed a lot of those voting and time cutoffs, so that in theory we could have that done in 2 weeks after adopting new bylaws.
Okay.
Any other discussion on this? Ben?
I'll just comment that I think one of the positive changes in the new bylaws is speeding up the speed at which we can have an election at least conducted. I'm not sure how much we want to shorten the period for people to put in their candidacies. But either way, I think if we can get at least some bylaws changes related to the president at large position and the elections in February, I think we can have an election sooner than would even be possible under the current bylaws. So I see this as unnecessary if we can actually move towards those targeted changes in February.
Thank you. Frank?
I would agree with Ben. I would see this as unnecessary, but I also wouldn't be opposed to setting dates. So in the event that we can't get the bylaws passed or something happens, that at least we have a date in place to start that process. And I would propose, I would say a month, let's say March 1st. And the cutoff date will be 60 days after that, as per 6.6 of the bylaws. So that should give us plenty of time to get everything straightened down, to get these draft bylaws passed.
So I'm just trying to capture it. Did I hear a motion?
Well, the motion on the floor is to set a date.
Right.
I would
To-
propose March 1st to set the date, the start date, and the cutoff date would be 60 days after that. So the announcement would be for March 1st, and the cutoff is 60 days after.
Okay. So let me go back to John. Would you see this as a friendly amendment to set the start date for a special election cycle at March 1st? So we would begin nominations then?
So
And
you
then
want to delay it 120 days now?
So Frank's proposal is to begin the special election cycle March 1st, which gives us an opportunity to pass either a new set of bylaws or as Ben proposed, a modified timeline for
Mm.
election.
No, the bylaws just require us to do this. We should have done it in December. All we're doing is setting a date for a special election for president and starting that ball rolling.
I
If
was
we
just
have to fix the bylaws before then, great. But that's not what the bylaws state and require us to do today.
Okay, so I was asked, Frank had a proposal. I was asking if you would accept a friendly amendment, and apparently you didn't, which is fine. So that is your motion. It's been seconded. Is there any other conversation on this before we vote on it? Hearing none. Let's do this again by roll call. Area 2,
Yes.
Area 3.
I think you have 62
Yes.
days in the
I
motion.
had 62 because it gives us tomorrow as part of the days, because we're going to start counting from today.
No, but the election has to be 90 days out. It's 60 days for the cutoff on nominations and then 30 days.
Yes, what I did is I said election nominations to end 62 days.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay. I just want to make sure that we're all on the schedule, and that's a good call out. Okay. So area 2 is a yes. Area 3,
Yes.
4,
Yes.
5,
Yes.
6,
No.
7,
No,
8. Russell.
Yes.
Russell, I didn't quite hear you.
Yes.
And area 1 is going to abstain because it affects me. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So motion passes. At 5:42. So I will work with Alan tomorrow to get that that nomination process started. Okay. I don't know why this is here. That was supposed to be further up. Next order of business is managing director reports. Alan, I'm going to stop sharing so you can share your screen if necessary.
Nope, that's fine. I'm just gonna read off the report and
Okay.
share some information. Just keep it simple, so that way you don't have to change anything. The reports here you can read. First off, wanted to welcome our 2 new members and just say Happy New Year to everybody. I'm sorry, my voice sounds funny. I've been fighting a fever all day, and I know I owe some of you an email. So I will get back to the emails tomorrow, but so just bear with me. Wanted to remind everyone, January 1st, we started a new staff member. Gary Hoffman has joined our team as our new finance director. Gary has been serving on a consultant role, and we were able to bring him on board to our team on a part-time basis. So Gary is now an employee of USPSA. And during the holidays, it was pointed out that we have a policy of use it or lose it on PTO. And there's a lot going on at this meeting. Didn't want to bring it here, but in the February meeting, I'm going to be bringing a policy that would like to change that there can be some carryover so we don't have such a skeleton crew in December. I want to thank Leighton, Jim, and Rick for all their work on IPSC. There's been so much going on for the World Shoots that are happening this year, and I don't think everyone realizes the amount of work that's going in behind the scenes to make this happen for our teams. So I really want to thank those three gentlemen for all their work on that. Nationals, have been getting good feedback on the Nationals, on the race gun and factory gun. And as we move forward, tonight we have a couple of motions that will impact those Nationals a little bit. But like I said, all the feedback I've been getting from folks in that has been great. Trademarks. Our logo has been trademarked, but we just received a word this month that our name, United States Practical Shooting Association, and USPSA are now approved registered trademarks. So if you go to Amazon and someone has USPSA written there, we can go after them because there's a lot of folks using our names just in text, thinking they can get away with it. And we can cut down on some of that. But those are registered trademarks now that we own those on a 5-year basis. Excuse me. Last week, Rick, Jake, and I attended the SHOT Show in Vegas, and we had several great conversations with CMP, with NSSF, with IPSC, and a lot of our current sponsors. But there are other groups we spoke to who want to find out how they can become sponsors, how they can help get some stuff on our prize tables. So we have a larger list on that. But the biggest announcement that came out of this is that we were able to finalize our agreement with Ely to make them our official ammunition of USPSA and Steel Challenge. It was a seamless transition going from federal over to Ely. Ely is excited about this. They really want to work with us and find ways for cross promotion and moving forward, but it'll be a good partnership, and we're excited about that. Regarding our membership numbers, we ended 2024 down only 554 members, which was down 1.4%. USPSA clubs, we were down 3. We had 496 clubs, and our Steel Challenge, we stayed exactly the same at 299. The reason those numbers are big, since January 1st, so we've been adding new members at a rate of between 30 to 34 members a day. We're already over 39,000 and growing. We're tracking to be over 40 to 41,000 this year, so we're hoping to keep that positive momentum going. And our activity fees are jumping by leaps and bounds, and we're seeing large increases in posts in that as well. So we're very excited about what we're seeing in membership and in activities, and we really want to keep that momentum going. And then finally, for the public here, our financial health, we ended 2024 on a very positive note, and going into 2025, our financial stability is very positive. At the end of 2024, our actual expenses were down 10% from what was budgeted, and our actual revenue was up 13.2% of what was budgeted. So I'm very excited to share that, you know, we're sitting on solid financial ground. We have a solid future and a plan for us for 2025. And that is my report.
Thank you, Alan. Any questions? Russell, I'll call on you first, since I can't see your hands. Any questions for Alan?
No, nothing from me.
Okay, thank you, Russell. John?
Thank you. Alan, two things. Number one, on the financial, I had a great conversation with Gary today, and I'm inclined to agree. It's nice to see that our finances are in great shape. But I have a bigger concern on corporate governance I'd like to address with you. And that is, last year I sent the organization a request for all reports sent to directors. You represented and our attorney represented that all of those reports had been produced or posted online.
John,
We know
that,
that
John, that is scheduled for an executive session towards the end of the meeting.
that's a different issue, and I have a right to ask the director questions right now.
I understand. I was just making sure that it wasn't the same issue. Okay,
Nope.
thank you.
Thank you. You stated that all of those reports had been produced online. We know that statement wasn't true. Can you please explain that to the membership?
Well, any reports that weren't online, I went through and the board meetings and for information that was public, and we went through, and I believe it was 19 items. There were smaller reports and some reports that just didn't get attached to board meeting minutes, and those were included. What was included in executive session was not shared publicly and not put out there because it was executive session.
But you didn't say that. You said all reports had been produced, and that was not a true statement, correct?
All reports were produced that were public reports.
But that's not what the request was, Alan. The request was all reports, and you said they had been produced. You didn't say open session reports had been produced, but not executive session. You and the attorney both made a false statement. I'm trying to understand that. Why didn't you clarify? And when I followed up with countless emails asking you to clarify, you ignored me. I'm a director of this
Point of order.
organization.
Point of order.
At what point does this become an employment discussion?
I'm done. I just want to hear his answer.
So
I followed the instruction of the board, John.
Alan, hold on for a second. Ben, you have a point of order. I didn't quite hear it. We were talking over each other.
I was just asking, at what point does this become an employment discussion with an employee about his job performance?
And he answered, it was board instruction.
Well, obviously, you should take that to executive session.
So
you're a guest. You're not entitled to speak.
Gentlemen, I have the ability to mute everybody. I don't want to do it. Please only speak when called on, okay? And address the chair. Don't address one another. Okay, if we're going to have a contentious conversation, I want to do it as civilly as possible. Okay? Troy, that involves you as well. Okay? Please don't force me to mute everybody and do that. Okay? Because I will. Okay. So if we're done with that topic, we can move on. Okay. I'm going to go back and share the agenda where we were. Okay. Next is on the docket was the IPSIC report, but since we were running long in the meeting, I sent it out to everybody and it will be attached. If nobody has any questions, we can move on. Okay. Hearing no questions, new business. I would like to nominate Alan Turner as the corporate secretary. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Area 2 seconds at
I'm sorry, I missed who seconded it. I'm just trying to keep the
that
notes.
That was John.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, 5:52 p.m. Is there any discussion? Okay. Hearing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, approved unanimously at 5:52 p.m. Next nomination I have is I would like to nominate Frank Rizzi as a board parliamentarian. We've used Frank in that role unofficially, and I'd like to just recognize that we would seek Frank's guidance first. It doesn't mean he is always correct. It means that if we have to do research as a board on procedure, he would be tasked with that. Okay. Do I hear a second?
Three.
Okay, area 3 seconds at 5:53. Any conversation? Any area 2?
I think Ben or myself would be a far better choice. Many times I've heard things from Frank that I didn't think were correct. I sent him notes to inquire as to his basis and he didn't respond. And I think even tonight we heard some different interpretations of what the documents say. So I don't think he's the best choice among our options.
Thank you. Any other conversation? Okay, hearing none, let's do this on a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Nope.
No.
Okay, I'm going to do this via roll call because there's a number of people and I want to get the counts right. Okay, area 2,
No.
area 3,
Yes.
area 4,
No.
area 5,
No.
area 6,
No.
area 7,
Abstain.
area 8,
Yes.
area 1 is yes. 1, 2, 1. Do I count that? It's 3. Motion does not pass. Hey, is there any other nominations for, John, I know you had some, but I'll ask the question anyway. Any other nominations for parliamentarian? Alex?
I would nominate Ben Berry. I know he's stated that his plate is quite full, but I would nominate him.
I would second or volunteer should he decline.
And Ben, would you accept the nomination?
I would.
Okay. Any discussion on area 6 as parliamentarian? Okay, so I get my counts right. We'll do this via voice again. Area 2,
Yes.
area 3,
Yes.
area 4,
Yes.
area 5,
Yes.
6,
Abstain.
7,
Yes.
8,
Yes.
and 1 is yes as well, passes. Congratulations, Ben. You're supposed to jump up and down and cheer. Okay. Next item on the agenda is we had some rules updates that we wanted to make. And the reason these are on the agenda here is because the next rule book is due out in a few days, and we wanted to make any clarifications. Ben, I believe these were yours.
Yes, these were unfortunately a bit expedited. They were sent to the Rules Committee, but because I only received them about 2 weeks before the cutoff, since we're trying to condense all the rules into one big update on the 31st, I appreciate just putting it before the board. So this first one was a concern brought directly by a member, basically relating to clubs that allow competitors to shoot the same match multiple times in the same division. And in some cases, they claim that this is because the current rule states that this is not allowed you're not allowed to shoot multiple divisions, the same division for multiple times for match recognition, and that effectively match recognition only applies if you're giving out trophies or plaques or something like that. And so basically this is a clarification to the existing rule that you're already allowed to shoot a match multiple times. This just makes it crystal clear that if you shoot it multiple times, they cannot be in the same division. And there's a subsequent rule that states that only the first one should count for match recognition.
Thank you. So your motion, so I can capture this, is to make this rule update, is correct?
Correct.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Area 5.
Okay. 85 seconds. Okay, discussion. Troy, I saw your hand up.
I took it down.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Any discussion on this rule? Proposal? Okay. Hearing none. Hearing none, I'm hoping there's not going to be a lot of a split decision here. So let's do this by voice. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. I will learn how to spell unanimously one day. Okay. The next item, Ben, is also yours.
So again, this was a concern that I appreciate a member writing up and sending in that I sort of worked to clean up and clarify a bit. But this was around basically adding a few parameters to the verbiage that was added to allow and that will be effective January 31st to allow video evidence. And the yeah, so it includes a new rule, 11.1.3.1, which states digital evidence submitted for appeal shall only be used to rule on the matter which is under appeal. And effectively, the discussion here is if during video review an additional penalty is seen in the video, can that be added? Or can somebody take video and then take it to an RO and say, hey, you didn't give him this penalty, but here's the video you should have. Admittedly, this is something of a hypothetical concern. This is something that may come to pass, may not. This was something that was discussed in the Rules Committee when we were discussing this rule, but I thought this was a well-written angle to address it, and I thought it was worth putting in front of the board. And I think probably, yeah, I think it probably makes sense to vote on that one separate from the second one, which is more specific to effectively revising the language that would prevent. Yeah, I think it makes sense to vote on this one separately.
Okay, so it's 113 and 11.131. Is that correct?
So the first paragraph is just stating the change that we already voted on. So the 113 part is just the existing rule that we've already passed. 1131 would add this verbiage.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Three.
I saw John's hand go up first. Any discussion on this proposed rule change? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposition?
Carry 8.
Okay, 1 no, 7 yeses. Passes at 6:02 p.m. Troy.
It's actually 11.1.3 for the one you're changing, not 113.
Oh,
Just
11.
to be accurate. Yeah.
Thank you, Troy. That was probably me cutting and pasting. Okay, and the final.
Yeah. So this rule just was brought up with regards to the potential conflict created in the rules where essentially a standing rule in arbitration is that how the event happened. So the current rule states, however, the commission of the infraction is not subject to challenge or appeal. And this would basically allow video evidence to challenge the account as related by the RO. So in some of the examples that we've discussed as we've been going back and forth with this rule, in the rule as written, even if you had video evidence showing that you had been incorrectly disqualified for a safety infraction, it would not, although the digital evidence would be inadmissible, this more specific rule would conflict with that and likely take precedence and prevent the digital evidence from being considered in cases like that.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second on the proposed rule change? I saw Area 2 raise his hand.
Sure.
Was that seconding, John?
Yes.
Okay, just checking. Any discussion on this matter? I know there was some initial discussion via email on this one. Did we drain that topic? Okay, hearing none. By voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, motion passes unanimously at 6:04 p.m. Okay. Next on the agenda, we have a number of items to keep the classification committee working. Alex, if you could do these quickly so we can get to other business, that'd be fantastic.
Sure. If there's any questions, obviously feel free to ask. But the first motion is move to authorize the classification committee to access USPSA classified score data via export with the following controls. And I listed 4 controls in a PDF, Jim, that is in the documents folder, unless you want me to read those all out.
No, I'm assuming that we all read those. If not, we can ask questions.
Second.
Do you want to do these as a block, Alex, or do you want to do them one at a time?
A block would be great.
Okay. Keep going.
Second motion is we move to authorize development and implementation of division-specific provisional status capability in the classification system. And then the third is move to place limited 10 into provisional classification status effective Jan 31, 25 due to equipment rule changes permitting optical sites.
Okay. Okay, do I hear a second?
You hear a second, and my congratulations to this committee for doing an incredible job.
Okay. We have second at 6:06 p.m. Discussion? Area 7.
So I have a question about the limited 10 provisional status. Wouldn't that be a violation of the bylaws to do that? That is a equipment rule and provisional status change, and I don't think you could do that without giving the members 90 days notice to comment on that.
So we're proposing something different than a new division coming into provisional, like we saw with LO, for example. This E flag, that the name's kind of irrelevant, but this net new flag that is being envisioned as such, it's for the purpose of saying that a change has been made sufficient enough or substantial enough that now the effect to the classification, to the high fade factors and how that applies to net new classifications, that we essentially don't want either to say individual classifier stages need to be put into provisional status. We just say that there is not enough data for us to, or for a determination to be made on how high fit factors now are affected to the division. So it's provisional to the state in which classifier scores can be submitted to them, not wholesale saying, as again we did with LO, that the entire division is provisional for the purposes of let's say match outcomes, etc.
Okay.
So Alex, I want to ask a clarifying question, and then we'll get to Ben and Troy. If I understood you correctly, you essentially couldn't change your classification in L10.
That's correct. Or could it newly classify?
Okay. I just want to make sure I understood. Ben?
So I think is the intent with this provisional status similar to the way the 23 and the 24 series were implemented, that once a high hit factor was determined, any scores on record during the provisional period would then be retroactively awarded a classification, if that's technically
is
feasible? That's the
correct.
intent? Okay.
Yeah, and the asterisk there is technically feasible. This is all incumbent on further conversation and making sure that Rick informs us as to the class. He's a member of the classification committee, but keeps us apprised of what those capabilities continue to be or could be.
So just to make it clear, you're still paying for a classifier and you will get your classification. We just are sort of forthrightly looking at the fact that we don't actually know what an accurate high hit factor is once you add optics to L10.
Precisely.
And so we're not going to give out incorrect classifications until we can determine
precisely
accurate ones. Okay, thank you.
Troy?
So if I recall, L10 with optics was not made provisional at the last meeting, right?
That is correct.
So to Frank's point about it violating the bylaws, I mean, at what point is it going to be provisional and for how long? I understand it's for classification. I get where you're going with that. I think you could add some words there to make that a little clearer.
Yeah, so to your question about the how long, don't have an answer for that. Really, it's a sufficient amount of activity would need to be submitted such that there is a confidence level in determining those hit factors to release that provisional status. I did also think about the wording there, and it's something that we discussed in committee. I'm open to amendments to that if it's what we're stuck on is that one word, but I feel like everyone here understands the intent. It's how that gets communicated. If someone has a cleaner way to communicate that, I'm open to a amendment.
Okay. Okay, I got Andy, Troy, and I had a comment as well. So Andy?
So the division itself is not actually becoming provisional. It's just that the classifiers are.
Correct. Activity for classifiers.
Right. So I guess it is sort like the language of calling the division now provisional is sort of weird. But because we even do classifications in provisional divisions. So it's,
so maybe move to place limited 10 division classifier activity into provisional status,
or just
how do you
temporarily suspend? I'm not sure what the right word is, but yeah, it's because the division is technically not provisional, and that's not even what we're trying to do. It's just the
and again, if it's just us getting semantically bound on this,
yeah,
I'm okay with that because I can communicate this out and draft a communication for us to to post here where it is hyper clear. Again, I was mentally stuck on a clear way to describe this as well.
So Troy, I got you teed up. Alex, I think what I would ask, since we want to do these as a slate, but it seems like 4-3 seems to have some controversy around it. Can we change your motion to only do 4-1, 4-2 and get that passed, and then we can continue our conversation on 4-3?
That creates, I'll say, significant hazard or additional hazard that we are trying to immediately avoid. I'd prefer if.
Okay, that's fine. I was just trying to move us along. So my concern is what you said was until there's enough data.
Correct.
Right. My concern is do we know what that enough is?
That, well, once we have access to the USPSA data and release that and aren't bound to kind of this third-party data that we've been utilizing, it's very likely that I have a clear answer to that. But at this time, motion number 1 will be very revealing to motion number 3, or to, excuse me, to the question which you're asking, which is around the timeline.
Okay, thank you. Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I would say whether it takes 6 months or however long, we know the current high hit factors are wrong. I think this was one of the reasons that significantly modifying a division in this way was a bad idea. But I think now that we've sort of voted to do that, I think our hand is sort of forced by this, unless the classifier system further have its reliability degraded.
Thank you. John, I did see your hand. I get Leif first.
Yeah, just two things real quick. I think just a simple verbiage change into the effect of place new classifiers in limited 10 into provisional status effective January 31st. That's the first thing. But second thing is, how are you going to know which new classifications submitted have been shot using an optic or iron sights?
That's irrelevant, or deem that irrelevant, since
Okay.
again, we believe that will stand out very clearly once those are submitted. Especially if you take like for like shooters, that from an analysis perspective, that'll stand out quite clearly. So there's no trepidation as to identifying that. But it's beginning to see what that delta is between like stages, like shooters, or similarly class shooters, and what that kind of discrepancy becomes.
Okay, John?
I was just going to say, I don't think we need to worry about a timeline here. The brain power, speed, and communication with which this committee has acted has been very impressive, and the work they've done, I think, likewise has been impressive. So I suspect we're going to hear back from them very quickly on additional needs and changes and tweaks. So I'm not sort of worried about this being open-ended right now. I don't think that's a concern.
Okay. So I heard two things. One is Leif suggested a wording change, and if you are amenable to that, Alex.
I am, yes.
Okay. Right. Leif, did I catch that?
It would be newly submitted classifiers.
Well, spelled properly, of course.
Or you could say classifiers submitted after January 31st, 2025, whichever is more clear.
Done. Alex, does that work for you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so just a comment on timeliness. One of the conversations I've had with a couple of members of the committee is the problem of small numbers. So divisions with low activity, they don't know how many submissions are needed to be able to form confidence. Limited 10 is pretty low, less than 1% of our activities. So I wouldn't, while the classifier committee might come out and say, here's a number that we need, it would be it might be a while before there's that many submissions for them to determine a hit factor, right? So that's something to be aware of as we're discussing this, okay?
That's certainly true. And just to briefly speak to that, next month, and then also at the offsite, we're going to talk further about classifier stage pruning, such that the time to hydration is much quicker than not, for the reasons you just spoke about, Jim. So yeah.
Any other conversation on this one? Okay, let us vote. Let's do this via a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously at 6:18 p.m. I'm going to scroll down here to executive session items. We had 3 executive sessions items teed up. That roughly would, I estimated 45 minutes. We are approaching, we're actually slightly after 45 minutes. I would ask that we table, I'll ask for a motion to table the remaining, or I'm trying to get back to where we were, remaining items until our next meeting. I see Ben.
So a motion to table is so you can drop a single thing to take up something more important.
Okay.
By definition, anything not addressed after a motion to adjourn is moved to the next meeting.
Understand. But what I want to do is skip the items in the agenda. Right. So since you're now the parliamentarian, I want to skip to the executive session items so we have time to discuss those before we reach our 3-hour limit. And John, I do see your hand.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's going to be a motion to suspend the rules.
Okay. So I would be looking for a motion to suspend the rules. And I'll entertain that. John?
The records issue I can withdraw. It's dealt with by a motion, and the other half of it I've dealt with already. And I think the bottom issue is moot based upon our discussion in committee. So
Probably is.
forget the third issue.
The third issue is the managing director's executive summary financial report.
And we've got those reports in the Dropbox, and
you do?
Yeah, I don't even know that we need to do that.
Okay. Okay, we can just continue then. Okay. So I have a number of committee nominations. There are a ton of them here. I would like to address these as a slate versus one by one to possibly get through them this evening. Audit committee, the chair, I nominate Frank, and the vice chair as John Burt. Frank is also nominating Richard Asher. I sent his resume out as a committee member. Compensation committee, myself as the chair and Frank as the vice chair. Finance committee is Russell as the chair. Vice chair is Alex. And the finance committee member would be Alan. The bylaw committee chair would be Frank Rizzi. The vice chair would be Ben Barry. Members Andrew Hudson, Greg Leach, and Tom Chesterman. Classification committee is Alex and Leif, and I'm not going to try to read all their names, but it's essentially the same names as before. Discipline committee chair would be Andy Erickson, with Area 6 director Ben Barry as the vice chair, and the same members as we had last year. IPSC and World Shoot Slot Policy Committee is the chair would be myself, and vice chair is Leif. Members would be Troy, Bob, Adam, John, Migliano, Mig, Leighton, and Matt Hopkins. The Mike Voigt Presidential Election Fund chair would be Alan, vice chair would be Leif Kunkel, and a member is Maggie Reese. Multi-gun committee chair would be, oh, I'm sorry. I made a mistake here. I spoke with Jake and he would prefer to be the vice chair. The chair would be Andy Erickson and the vice chair would be Jake, with the same number of people as last time. Rules committee, Area 5 director Leif would be the chair, with Troy as the vice chair. And the members would be 2 range masters plus 3 USPSA members. I would want nominations for those in our February meeting. Steel Challenge is the director of Steel Challenge would be Zach Jones. Area 4 director Alex would be the vice chair, and Jesse Misko, Brad Jeffers, and Ed Bonowitz are members of the committee. So that is the nominations.
Point of order.
Go ahead.
As you know, I have some concerns about the compensation committee, and in attempting to look at that, there's actually no record that that committee was ever created by the board or under what structure it was created. And so I think doing this as a slate, there are other issues with other committees, but there's no record that that committee even exists. There are no minutes, there are no reports, and more importantly, there is no chartering document outlining it. So as a point of order, I don't think we can include compensation committee in a slate discussion like that.
So your point is not well received. There is a charter. It was approved last year. There are minutes. There are executive session minutes. The committee has been longstanding since the Mike Foley era. So that is why your motion is not well received.
Jim, may I just test your assertion, because those documents you just referred to are not available to directors? Are you saying they are?
I'm saying that they are. They're either in the committee folder or they're with minutes of the meeting.
Those are not anywhere in the Dropbox. So would you please tell me where I would go to find those documents, because they do not exist,
They're,
or as I can tell.
so again, your motion was not well received, right? That's not and this is not a debatable topic. I would be happy to point you at those again later, but not this evening. Okay.
You say again like you have, but you haven't, and they're not there. But okay.
John, I have. Okay.
I look forward to receiving that confirmation.
So do I get a, I'm looking for a second on this slate. If I don't get a second, we'll go through each one.
Area 3.
Seconded by Area 3 at 6:25. Any debate or conversation? John?
Several of these committees only have one or two directors, and I think that is not a responsible way of handling these things, and that we need more directors and we need more members on all of them. And before approving a slate and moving on, I think we should review those current appointments and have members on committees, whether they be directors or just members of the organization. But to have a committee without members, I think, is irresponsible.
Andy?
If I'm not mistaken, Jim, we can add more people to committees in subsequent meetings, correct?
Yes, and as I've sent out an email, and I've also had separate email with Mr. Burt, I expect and I trust that the chair and vice chair will staff their committees appropriately. The policy document that goes along with this says the same thing, and because of the rules of in the bylaws, just bring those forward, and I would make the nominations and we'd vote on them. Any other discussion? Okay, so let's vote on this one. And we'll do this by roll call. Area 2.
No.
Area 3.
Yes.
Area 4.
Yes.
Area 5.
Yes.
Area 6.
Yes.
Area 7.
Yes.
Area 8. Russell?
Yes. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay. Area 1 is yes. Passes at 6:28 p.m. Oops. Next on the agenda, I will learn how to spell committee as well. Next on the agenda is nominations for a special committee to search for Delaware Council. I'm nominating Frank Rizzi as the chair. The managing director is Alan Turner, and Frank may have other members in mind. Frank?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd also like to add the Area 2 Director to the committee if he is willing to serve.
I am.
Okay. So those are the 3 nominations. Do I get a second?
I'll second.
Yeah, 6:29 p.m. Okay. Seconded at 6:29 p.m. Any conversation? Okay. Voice by voice, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Russell, I didn't hear you. I just want to make sure.
Yes, I said yes.
Thank you. The next committee that we have is a fee structure committee looking at fees in general. I'm nominating Alan Turner to chair that committee. Vice chair is John Burt. Members are Zach Jones and Jake Martins. Do I hear a second?
7.
Okay, I got a second at 6:30 by area 7. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Jim?
Yes.
Oh, I have my hand up.
Yes,
Sorry.
go ahead. Go
I
ahead. I
didn't
saw.
want- I would actually like to very briefly discuss, because I'm not sure we need this committee right now. I had a long talk with Gary today, and we don't even really know what the numbers are. And I think it ought to be just backburnered for a year without any changes right now, would be my 2 cents. I mean, I'm happy to do it and have the discussion, but I don't think it's something we need to do right now or can do right now.
So what I would suggest is that the 3 of you or the several of you get together, the fee structure, and get together. And if you come back and say, we don't need to do anything, that's an acceptable answer, right? I would prefer that because this committee started some work last year. I'd like to get that conclusion to that. And if the
Friendly
report,
amendment, can we add Gary?
yes, we can. Alan, are you okay with that? Where's Alan? Is he still here?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm still here. Yes, I just want to be careful with Gary's time being
Yes.
part-time.
Okay, so all y'all just be cognizant that Gary is part-time. Okay, so we can add Gary, and I don't remember Gary's last name. Any other conversation on this one? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, motion passes at 6:32 p.m. Okay, next on the agenda, there is the Finance Committee report and recommendation. Russell.
Thank you. Jim, which ones are we doing? Are we doing the transferring, or is this the RO pay increase?
The Finance Committee report. So the recommendations that you placed about transfer of funds.
Okay. 1 second.
Okay. Do you want me to share that document?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay, just give me a moment.
Are we going to discuss this? Are we in exec?
We are not.
Should we be to discuss this financial stuff?
I will entertain a motion.
We can skip and do the rest of the agenda before we go into exec if you want.
Right. The rest of the agenda is very, very long, and I don't know if we would get there this evening.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Whatever you want to do.
And I don't have the report, but if it's just the recommendation to transfer money I did discuss that with Gary, and I think we could just authorize that without going through everything.
The committee recommendation is in the Dropbox. And it does have numbers in it about things, and that is, according to 10.2, considered confidential. So if we want to show the recommendation, we'll discuss that in detail, we would have to go into executive session. If we just want to read it on our own and vote on it, we can do that in open session.
I'm fine either way, Jim. It's fairly straightforward if everybody just wants to read it for a second.
Yep. Okay, I'll give everybody 2 minutes to read it.
So I would move to adopt recommendations 3A and B.
I would second that.
Yeah, there's already
Should-
two.
Yeah, I would say let's take the motions as written. Any reason not to?
Right.
Yeah, let's take motion 1. Right.
To make it simple, Jim, I'll move for all 3 of these, or 4, depending on how you count them.
Okay, all 4. So so area 8 moves to so basically moves to adopt the recommendations in the report. Yes, John?
Russell, on item number 2, I understand that those funds are already identified in our accounting. What is the reason for creating that specific policy or account?
Because we had no policy in place to actually move the money. You know, obviously we keep the long-term membership dues in an account, just not these accounts. And these accounts were specifically set up for that purpose. We just have not been transferring the money.
So from my discussion with Gary today on this topic, I'm not sure that's currently the case. At one time it was, but as far as I know, there isn't currently a specifically identified account that holds those funds. So I would love to hear Gary's thoughts on this is my only, or are Gary's
Okay.
thoughts in this?
You're free to talk to them, but the account's identified in motion 2. That account number is identified.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Currently, the money is not identified or segregated. And so are we saying Gary's going to identify that amount and we're going to put it in this specific account? But is there a need to do it? That's all I'm asking.
So I'm going to be a procedural person for a moment. We don't have a second, so I'd like to get a second on this motion before we continue with debate.
Area 4.
Thank you. Now, I'm sorry, guys. I needed to get that in there.
Okay, so John, because of, I haven't been on the board very long, but last year when I was on the board, we had not been transferring money. My understanding is the money had not been transferred for quite some time. When we bring in the long-term membership dues money, it just stays in the operating account. So it had not been moved. The money is easily identified. We know how much money has come in for long-term accounts, long-term memberships. We just never moved the money. So now we are we're formally moving the money to the account that we have set up for that purpose.
Okay. From what I understood, we have an operating account and we have an investment account, and we've not moved anything between the two in quite some time. But
Correct.
that amount of money earmarked is not segregated. It's commingled between the two, and we just have to identify it. Or we have identified it. We know what it is.
But we have multiple long-term accounts. We don't just have one investment account. We have multiple long-term investment accounts.
Right. We have 4 at Schwab.
Yeah.
Right. But none of those are identified or tagged as long-term money. And likewise, the operating account is not tagged as long-term money. We have the amount and we know what that is. All I'm asking is, what does Gary think about this? Do we need it
Gary worked with Alan on this.
on this motion?
Yes.
I know he worked on the transfer. I'm asking, did he work specifically and say, we need this motion?
Well, no, Alan and I worked on the motion, but Alan worked with Gary to come up with these numbers.
So, Alan?
Yeah, I wanted to jump in here. I did talk with Gary about this, and this is moving these funds into the dedicated accounts that we have here, whether it's, I call it multi-year accounts or operating accounts. And these motions give us the opportunity to put money in and out after reviewing it on a quarterly basis. Because right now, some of that money is in the account, some of it is in checking accounts. And Gary is tracking it, but we're trying to put it in one location so we can say, this is the dedicated account for the funds.
Gotcha. That makes perfect sense. So I'm all on board.
Yep.
Okay. Any other conversation on this topic? Okay. Hearing none, let's move this to a vote. Hopefully we can do this with a voice vote. All in favor of adopting the recommendations in the Finance Committee report?
Aye.
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 All right.
Okay, motion passes. Oh, actually, any no's? Hearing none, motion passes at 6:40 p.m. unanimously. Item number 8, or gosh knows what the real item number is. There's a motion to increase the national staff, and I know there were some other corrections to the budget related to nationals. Russell?
Yeah, I'll handle the first one, and that is just simply to increase the staff reimbursement for nationals, the per diem from $25 to $30 a day, and the travel allowance from $375 to $400. So rather modest amount, and as long as I've been going to nationals since 2019, it has not increased.
Okay.
Second.
So there's some other things that go along with this, I believe, Alan. You have that document?
Yes, it is also in the Dropbox for 2025 budget adjustments for the 2025 nationals. I don't know if everyone has had a chance to look at that. The per diem was one motion. Then, and one of the motions is, while we were trying to very specifically identify travel expenses when we presented the budget in December, Gary and I, reviewing the budget after the vote happened, realized that the main line item for travel expenses, 58000, we took out because we broke it all out. We did not put the main part back in. So there is a request to put that line item back in because we removed headquarters staff travel into a separate line, area directors travel into a separate line, and NROI instructors, their additional travel that the board gives them on top of regular staff travel, into a separate line. So we could identify the spending in those lines. When we did that, this line mistakenly was not put back in. So that is another motion. And then the third motion is that we'd like to add a small per diem for match directors and assistant match directors that are not employees of USPSA. I don't know if can I say the amounts? I'm not sure.
nothing. No.
Point of
Okay, you
order.
guys,
Jim, why don't
recognizes
you
area two.
put it up for? Can you put it in the box so everybody can look at these three motions together?
If I do that, then we'd have to go to executive session because it's finances again. So area two
No,
is
I don't mean put it on the screen. I mean just direct everybody to it, just like we did for the previous four.
yes, I can do that. Area two, go ahead.
These items are not on the agenda. They were just provided today. And more importantly, I had a long talk with Gary about a lot of these numbers, and he was going to provide some additional information that I think we all need some time to read and consider. So I don't think this matter should be taken up tonight. The per diem Russell's, I'm fine. I second that. And I'm all for it. But in terms of the budget and the travel numbers and the expenses, I think we need to discuss, and it's not on the agenda.
Your point is well received. It is not explicitly on the agenda. It was sent out earlier, but your point is well received. So in the recommendation, it is essentially motion 2 in the budget adjustment motions, which is the $30 and the $400. Okay. Adopt motion number 2. Okay. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. Hearing none. By voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes at 6:45 p.m. unanimously. Next item on the agenda, John, I believe this one is yours.
Yeah, I move that the board retreat include only elected or appointed directors of the organization, and that key employees make themselves available for video or telephone conference as needed.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Four.
You get a second by area 4 at 6:46 p.m. Discussion?
Jim, if I may.
Go ahead, Russell.
Yeah, I think this is a terrible idea. Jake and Troy have more experience than anybody on the board. A lot of the board members are relatively new to the board. I think it's foolish to have a retreat to discuss the organization and its future without 2 key employees.
Thank you, Russell. Ben?
So John, just to clarify, who would be included? Just the 8 area directors?
Correct. Well, not Russell, so 7.
I would say at the very least, Alan should be included.
I don't have a problem with that.
All right, so is that a friendly amendment to the motion?
Friendly amendment.
Okay, stand by. Okay. Any other? I'm sorry, Andy?
You're muted.
Andy?
I would assume that those employees have already paid for travel, because I certainly did a while ago. Then we'd literally be setting money on fire if they've already paid for it, thinking they were going, and now all of a sudden we're going to say, no, you're not going. Now we're still spending money on airplane tickets that have already been purchased because everybody's flying out in 2 days or 3 days.
Thank you, Andy. Troy as a guest.
So am I to understand that if this passes, we're just supposed to sit around and be ready to be called on for anything without being at the meeting? Even though, yes, I do have airplane tickets bought. I mean, I'm not sure that I have an on-call thing in my job description. So
Okay.
while I do work this job 24/7, just about, just to be at your beck and call is not going to be within my thing for this weekend unless I'm at that meeting.
Yeah. Thank you, Troy. Any other conversation? So I have a couple of comments, and they echo Russell's. The part of what we need to build strategic direction is an understanding of the strengths and weaknesses of the organization. And the key employees that are there need to help inform us on what they see is going on with the organization and what they can do and what they can't do. And in a large organization, that information would be provided over the course of months leading up to a retreat like this. And that hasn't been done, partly because the board is part-time. So I would fear leaving them out would leave information out of our hands, and we couldn't make good decisions without them, without that input. That's my 2 cents. Go ahead, John.
I think a large part of a board retreat and the purpose behind it is for directors to have candid discussions. And one of the things we need to discuss is the employment structure and performance of employees and how we're going to handle those issues in the future. And while Alan is certainly a good part of that discussion, I think having the remainder of the staff there who we are talking about is inappropriate and uncomfortable and destroys our ability to have those candid discussions.
And the proposed agenda only has the employees there on Friday and Sunday. We have all of Saturday to have that open conversation without them in the room. Okay. So there's that. Is there any other conversation on this topic? Hearing none. So the motion on the table is that the board retreat include only elected appointed directors and the managing director of the organization, and that key employees make themselves available for video conferencing as needed. Alan, you're muted.
Sorry, the hotel does not have video conferencing available, so it would have to be through someone's laptop to be able to do it.
I can do that.
Thank you for the clarification. Alex?
I can totally bring a projector and kind of like a speaker hub too, so
Yeah.
I'm totally down to do that.
Yeah, logistics are kind of a separate conversation, okay? Any other discussion on the motion? Okay. We'll do this by roll call. Area 2.
Yes.
Area 3.
No.
Area 4.
No.
Area 5.
No.
Area 6.
No.
Area 7.
No.
Area 8. I'm pretty sure that was a no, Russell. Can you confirm?
I confirm no.
Okay. Area 1 is no as well. Motion does not pass. What time is it? Andy?
We are closing in on 9 o'clock in the central time zone. Before we dive into a bunch more stuff, I would like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Area 3 moves to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Area 7.
Area 7 seconds at 6:53 p.m. Any conversation? Okay. Alex?
Did we decide early on or at the beginning of the meeting that we're picking this up at the board meeting or the retreat? I forgot where we landed on that.
So, stand by. Frank?
Yeah, Mr. President, motion to adjourn is a privileged motion, is not debatable.
Thank you for the reminder. So, okay, so let's vote on this one. By voice, all in favor of adjourning?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Any opposed?
No.
7 yeses, 1 no. Motion passes. Motion passes. The meeting's adjourned at 6:54 p.m. Any remaining items moved to a future agenda as old business. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Take care.